Each of us has been given by God great gifts, gifts to be able to allow the beauty of what God puts in us to share with other people. Today, a beautiful artist by the name of John Swanson is going to share with us the gift of art to know God. Stay tuned. Hello, I'm Father Mike Manning. God bless you very much. Thank you for tuning in. Today we have a special experience of a man who has been able to touch the beauty of God with the beautiful thing of art. John Swanson. John, thank you so much for coming and being with us. And I'm looking forward to this because I think we're all artists in our own way. But you've been able to experience God, and not only experience God in your life, but you've taken the risk of now moving into art as a way of somehow expressing that. Is that true? That you're trying to give us an expression of who God is from your own perspective?
I went to Immaculate Heart College at night. They had a night class of art, and it was with a woman named Corita Kent. She was, at that time, Sister Mary Corita.
Corita Kent, my gosh. Of course, everybody knows Corita Kent, the beautiful non-artist, yes.
Yeah, and she taught lettering and design, and in a way, it was a women's college at the time, and so but they allowed open in the night class, so I took a night class with her, and she was very generous. I think she understood I was kind of at the end of my rope. I felt kind of lost. And so then I started doing lettering, and then I got to meet more of the people that were there. Some of the other artists, we started a theater. It was a street theater, and it was about social concerns and political ideas. And it was during the time of the Vietnam War, and so we were all involved. And then I kept working, and then someone gave me an old silk screen, to print. And I used to watch, at the college, they had a printing where they do silk screen. I used to watch them. So then I started teaching myself. And for years, I just worked developing the ideas, but I never thought of what I was doing was art. I was just doing lettering, and then I do drawings. And one of my friends that was an artist said, "Oh, you ought to look at this book and try to draw like this." And so I was learning, and then I'd show people, and then they say, "Oh, it's not so good," or you're doing good. And so I just kept on working. And then I used to go outdoors and sell artwork in the flea markets. And many of the artists didn't want to do that. And I had no shame. I'd just go out there.
I love it.
I would go out and sell. "I'll sell for you. I'll help you sell your work." So I'd go out and sell my work. And eventually I sold their work. And then eventually my work became more developed, and I said, well, I think I'm just going to show my work. I don't want to mix it all up. So then I did, and then eventually someone said, well, we'd like to publish your work and promote it. But it started real slow, and there was never any thought, well, you're doing art and you're a fine artist. It was something that I was doing that was kind of exciting, and I enjoyed it a lot because I was learning and I was teaching myself.
You know what really strikes me, though, just from this beautiful story, is that this all arose out of deep discouragement. You felt it wasn't working with medicine, it wasn't working with this and working with that. You didn't know where to go, and suddenly, and I'm hoping that maybe from the people at home as they listen to this, maybe in their discouragement and even depression, this could be the foundation of something brand new and fresh, which you've now allowed this art to be that expression.
Yes,
Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense. When you're going through it, you don't, it's hard to articulate what's going on, like when you're depressed. And you find something, it seems like a distraction. I know people would come to me and say, John, you better go back to college. Your life is ruined if you stay like this. why are you trying to do artwork when there are many people that go and get their bachelor's degrees and masters in art and they can barely make a living? Why? And here you're out on the street, you're doomed. You know, they would discourage my family. My mom would send my godparents, and they'd come over and say, "What are you doing?" But I kept on working. It was almost like it was like I was discovering something that was inside me to be creative and explore. And many of the ideas were coming out of, like, unconsciously. I was working on there's universal ideas, you know, like this idea of discouragement and how do you find hope. And so many of the images would be about hope. And that's why, like I did a lot on the dream of Jacob, you know, the idea of dreaming, and also on the great catch, you know, you know, when the apostles would throw down their net and they couldn't get any fish. And then
totally discouraged, everything was lost.
And then they'd pick up the net, and it was.
Wow.
But see, I was going to these images, but I didn't, and I'd repeat them. I've done paintings, many paintings of that theme, and the theme of Jacob, but I didn't realize that it was really an unconscious response to like the Spirit guiding me and giving me a vision. And that it's really about me, like throwing the nets one more time. It was like somebody kept saying, okay, try one more time, try one more time. Because all the time I wanted to give up. Every few months I'd say, no, I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this where it's so unpredictable. I've got to give up. But then I'd go out and try to find a job, and I realized I didn't have very good skills. No one was interested in me. And then I'd start working on a new project, and I'd forget. I'm all wrapped up in the work. And I was able to make a living, but very much on the fringe, always on the fringe, barely making it. And I did go to England, and I lived there 4 years. And I was able to, just by going to the galleries, and then people from the United States would come to visit me, and they'd buy work. And I would just be able to, I lived a low enough income that I could manage. But it was always not sure.
Yeah, we're going to come back, and I want to see the fruit of this discouragement and this pushing of hope, the beautiful things that you've done with your art. You stay tuned. We're going to be able to see now the beautiful work of John Swanson. We'll listen to this message first. I hope I come across as a person who's deeply excited about this ministry. I believe very much in the Lord Jesus Christ. As a Roman Catholic priest, I want to share that message with as many people as possible. Television is the way of doing it. And yet the difficulty is that I'm always kind of on the edge of being able to continue. The bills are mounting, especially with the financial situation that's going on in our country and the world. And it's very, very difficult. Now, I know that you are being bombarded continually by people coming and saying, give me support for this. And the last thing that I want to do is in any way to take away from the money that you give to your parish, the money that you give to take care of children that are dying of cancer, and all of those wonderful concrete experiences. But I do want you to think of the value of what it means to be able to get into the lives and homes of individuals and tell them about Jesus and call them to the most important thing, which is an experience of God and His love and forgiveness. Now, again, as I say, I know you're being bombarded with all kinds of requests, and here I am coming to you again. I'm going to pose a challenge to you. And I know that there are a lot of you there, and again, you're all being bombarded. Would you be willing to send $1? If each of you today would send $1, that would allow us to continue and to be able to get up onto a par with the other programs with equipment and things that we need. I think you can spare $1 as you think of the groceries and things that you're doing. But if you would do that, I know that we could bring about a revolution of success for the program and a deep, deep ability to touch the lives with Jesus' love around the world. John, you've told us a story of great discouragement and struggles, but now you've come out and you've been able to touch the beautiful gift of art, and I think we're hungry now to find out. Could you tell us, for example, this first painting here?
Yeah, it's called the Psalm 23. It's a silkscreen print that I printed 47 overlays of color.
So 47 times you did the silk screening. Oh, how beautiful.
It's a very elaborate. So this is one of my last works, and I had the image of two people in a little drawing and lost in a forest. It was just a drawing, but then I developed it, and it was funny. I was at the Mass one Sunday, very soon as I started it, and they read the Psalm 23, and I thought that's what it is. It's though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I'm not afraid, for you are with me. And so it's this dark forest, but yet there's a lot of illumination. And I didn't put a moon in it. I left it kind of so that there would be just filled with stars. And I keep thinking about ancient people, that these valleys and these forests were very dangerous in the old days because there were no lights. But I thought also that, they're walking with lanterns, but there's all these animals that are kind of hidden behind and in between the trees. You've got the
lion and the lamb very close to one another, either the incongruous.
It's remnants of the peaceable kingdom, but also I wanted the stars to be so dense that it would evoke the night of the people that were our ancient ancestors, that they would have lived in places where the stars were a wonder. I took this drawing of the 12, it's actually more than 12. Anyway, but I put it in a round table, and they're sharing a meal together. And people say, well, where's Judas? And I always say, well, I didn't choose to portray the betrayal. I just wanted to show the meal and how they were sharing and forming community.
I like the arm around Jesus. Is that John that has his arm around Jesus?
I didn't put any names on anyone.
But look at that.
But everyone could choose.
Their intimacy, there's a wonderful there.
Well, I mean, I think in the people in the Middle East are more caring, and they hold hands and they kiss more in a way of fraternal affection.
Yes.
And also then I started to put the design around the image, the architecture, and then I had this border, and then I was wondering what could I do to make the border connected with the Last Supper. And so I thought, well, the sacred is happening, but it all came from all the people working all around. Like I have people sowing seeds, I have people watering the plants, I have people reaping, and
they're trimming the tree over here.
Yeah, and then they're also harvesting fruit. They're also grape pickers and pruning the tree, and then there's a man pressing the wine. But then I thought and also they're grinding the corn and making bread and sharing the bread. And then I realized that the other aspect of the sacred and the ordinary is in the sacred, that there's also Matthew 25, when I was homeless, you visited me. When I was in prison, you visited me. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me. When I was naked, you gave me clothes. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. And so I put little scenes. There's 78 little scenes. So what became something very simple and, with large figures became like a very complex work. There's 78. They're almost like postage stamp size.
Yes.
But they're very carefully drawn. And many people like this image. From all faiths, and even one of my collectors that's Jewish, she bought it, and I asked her, well, what prompted you to buy it? And she said, well, I like your writing about it, that it's about sharing and community. And so she looked at the universal idea rather than the specific, which I like, because that's our whole point. We share something that we could share with many people. That it's the universal ideas that go beyond, that we can share with other people, and that they can see elements that they have in their faith. This is an important work. It's called the Procession, and this was the work that I spent the most time. This, well, the original painting I did in 1980 when I first came back from England. I was in the desert at this grand fiesta in Tucson, Arizona. It's called San Javier del Bac. It's an old mission, and they had a festival for Father Kino.
Oh, yes.
And it was an anniversary. I think it was his 300th or 350 years. And people from all over, all the native people came and they danced, and they had all their costumes, and it was at night with bonfires. And it wasn't a show, it was really like an offering and a prayer. And it moved me so much, because I love processions, but I'd never seen one like this. And so then I went and I started painting, and it took me 14 months to paint the picture. And then
14 months to paint the picture.
Yeah, and then I made a poster of it many years ago, so in 1982, and then the Vatican saw it. A friend of mine went to the Vatican, we showed it to them, and they said, well, we like the poster, but we would like the painting. And so the director of the modern collection of religious art was going to be in San Francisco. There was a traveling show. He told me we'd meet, and then it turned out his wife was sick, and he changed his plans, and he said, I can't come down. And I was really discouraged, because I was all excited that he would come over. And so then I sent him a telegram and said, I'm going to be there tomorrow. And I drove up with the picture, and then I had telegraphed him, said, if you have a moment to spare, I'll come and see you at the hotel. And so we spent an hour, and he looked at the painting, and he said, yes, we want it. But one problem is that we don't buy work. You'll have to find a sponsor, because we don't take art from artists. You have to have a sponsor that will give it to us. So I drove back kind of discouraged. But then Father Merrifield, who was the president at Loyola.
Loyola Marymount, yes.
Yeah, he's a Jesuit, and he was one of my patrons. That was about 83. He said, John, what's going on? And I said, well, I told him the story, and then he said, well, we're going to do it. We're going to do a fundraiser, and we're going to buy the painting, and we're going to send it.
Wow.
And so it was there. It's been there since '83. And the exciting part, it's up on display. It was always in his office, because when I went there in 91, I went there to the Vatican to visit, and I had to go into his office, and it was there hanging. And his assistant was there, and he was taking me on a tour, the assistant to the director. And I said, well, did he just put it up because I was visiting? I'm very credulous. And he said, no, it's always there. Oh, and then the director said, well, more important people come and see it here. But anyway, that was in 2003 that it all happened. But in 2007, I completed this work. And this was a year of work. But it wasn't so difficult like beginning the painting. It was like I had the painting to work from as a resource. So I had a lot of the drawings worked out. And it has 89 overlays. So that was the most work I'd ever done on it. And it was the most complex work. And I made a serigraph, meaning that I made multiple copies. There are 250. They're signed and numbered. And each one is hand printed. There's one color you print, then you go to the next color, you let it dry, then you work. But each stencil that I had to draw for each color would take 2 to 3 days. So it's very elaborate. And there's 54 scenes of the Bible and scenes of spiritual and religious scenes. There's from the Hebrew scriptures, from the Christian Bible, there's some saints, from the
yes.
ancient old saints, and it looks like it's in Mexico, because the people are coming out of the cathedral, and they're singing and they're playing instruments, and it's like a wonderful procession. It's like they're animated, and they're coming out into the world to bring all their stories. This is an image that I developed from a painting that I had done earlier. But in the painting, and in this idea here, the background seems more important than actual David and Goliath. But the theme of David and Goliath is God chooses the weakest to confound and overwhelm the mighty. Yes. And so I keep thinking about all these movements, you know, like Martin Luther King, Cesar Chavez, all these people that are just like people that are small, you know, people that live in the society, and there's all this power and money that's trying to stop at them, but somehow God chooses the weakest to confound that, like examples. But I have all the battle scenes, all the different soldiers, yes, and the different tribes. But really, the stars of it are all the people working in the background. There's miniatures of many people that are tilling the fields, yes, and they're shepherds. And then there's, excuse me, there's people harvesting. And then in the front are all these animals and insects, and there's many kinds of plants. And it's really highly detailed. And then you see many little birds and ducks and rabbits. Yes, yes. And there's even chickens there. Yes, yes. And what I wanted to show is that there's more life going on, that this war is happening, but that life has to continue somehow. And also I try to make it very dramatic. What I have here is everything's happening at once. It's almost like multiple events are going on all at the same time. The people are coming from the village, and they're bringing flowers and candles, and then there's musicians coming, and they're mourning, they're all weeping, and they're coming around this corner. And then at the same time, people are moving the stone. So that's the name of this, Take Away the Stone. And also there's all these figures of people weeping, the sisters and all the relatives. And then they're looking, and then Christ is, actually I have him pulling Lazarus out of the tomb to embrace him. There's so much pattern and overlays of color. It evokes the people in Mexico that celebrate Day of the Dead. You know, this whole thing of people coming with flowers and music. And everything's shaped. It's not highly decorated, it's all shaped. So there's many layers of color to create this gradations of colors so that they look more like volume. They have more volume. And it also has a feeling of the muralist, the Mexican muralist Diego Rivera, of this kind of shaping the figures. Because before my work was always flat, but as I got more advanced and learned more by my work, I started to want to have more shaping. So that's one of my favorite. But the idea is come out of the tomb, come out, and it's also what I have to keep reminding myself: what's blocking me to come out and be alive? Yeah. How do we come out of our tomb? How do we become fully alive? And maybe the picture is that. And the 6 months that it took me to do this, I would say the rosary as I walk to my work. I have to walk a long distance, and I'd make up my own mysteries of the rosary about Lazarus and his sisters, sure, and what each person was thinking, and how did Christ feel, and so I try to make it like a contemplation, because it's not an easy story, but it's one that has so much richness.
God bless you, John. We're gonna come back in just a moment, and we're gonna pray. And I think what's so beautiful is that everything that you do, whether it's the 80 characters or whatnot, people can look at your work, and each person can be touched and say, I can relate to that person. I can relate to what you've created. as a way of perhaps giving hope. Thank you. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back. I hope you're as excited as I am at the power of television to be able to bring the good news of Jesus into the lives of vast numbers of people. We're able to do that now. But I've got to share with you, it's tough. A lot of people think because I'm a Catholic priest, I've got the Vatican sending me money or the bishops sending me money, and it's really not true. The way it happens is you are willing to reach out, to pray for me, but also to support me. And I'm going to ask you, in the midst of all the petitions that come to you for support, could I ask you, if you really believe that this can be a powerful way of changing lives, would you send me $1? All I'm asking for is $1. And let that $1 be a dream of a missionary challenge to change the world. Please, I believe in this, and I believe in you. Please, $1. John, the overpowering thing that I experience is hope. In the midst of discouragement, in the midst of doors that seem to be closed, and even hopelessness, you offer hope. And Lazarus, as you said, is one of your favorites, but it also, the light and the vision that comes through with what you're saying. And there are a whole bunch of people that are home that are writing to us. They're sending emails. They're calling on the telephone. And they're in darkness. They're in a world that seems to be closing down, with families breaking up, with sickness coming into their lives, with abuse. And they're looking for hope. And I thank you for coming and letting us see your paintings. And I want to pray right now for these people. For example, let me just kind of reach in here. Look at here. Veronica and Jose from Arizona. The relationship in their marriage they're having a problem. This is from Massachusetts. This is wants prayer for himself and his family for protection. This is from Louisiana, Lois. Her son is on drugs. Let's pray. Let's pray. Lay your hands, if you would, just right here. Lord, thank you for the blessings that you've given to John. Thank you for the blessings that you're giving to each of you right now. And may what John has done, which is shine forth with light, allow Christ to come into your life and give you the hope and the vision and the peace that only God can give. And now, may Jesus' love for you always make you smile.